Howdy, my name is Kayla Rodriguez, and for Project 3 I'm going to be doing a sketchbook haul as well as going over some techniques, some tips, and some tricks to help you get started on your own sketchbook and to start improving your own drawings. So stay tuned. In terms of sketchbooks or sketching, I keep a very simple setup. It usually just consists of whatever sketchbook I have at the moment and a pencil pouch with just a few mediums in there that I like having fun with. And these might not be the same for you. Maybe you might feel more comfortable with colored pencils or just ballpoint pen or ink pen or markers. It's really up to you. I like carrying mediums that I can take with me everywhere, not something too bulky or too heavy. So I always felt like these, the ones I'm about to mention, are good options if you're trying to have a sketchbook for on-the-go stuff, or if you just want to keep the bulk to a minimum. I use a lot of ink. I use a lot of ink pens. I use a lot of ballpoint pens. It's a little bit more tedious, especially if you're doing a bigger piece. However, I find that you can achieve a really great amount of detail and some pretty cool effects when you put in the time to shade in all those little parts with all those little lines. Like I said, it takes a little bit of patience. However, the end result is definitely satisfying. Another medium that I really like to use is watercolor. Now this used to be, I believe, a vape pen aluminum box. I took out one of the watercolor sets from one of my brother's paint sets. It's very cheap watercolor, however, it still works and it still gets the job done. I hollowed out or emptied out the metal box and I put my watercolors inside there so I could take that on the go. Okay, lastly, and probably one of my favorite ones, is soluble graphite. This one I started using in high school. I started to experiment with that one. This one actually was gifted to me by my art teacher. What's cool about this one is that you can use the water pen, and this one again you can use it with the watercolor paints, but you basically just press on it a little bit and it moistens the bristles with the water inside, and you're able to you paint directly onto the paper from the graphite pencil. You can also draw with the graphite pencil and then go over it with the water pen if you want to achieve more of a shadow effect. But if you are trying to make detail with the soluble graphite with the water pen, you can just go ahead and rub those and get enough tint or paint on the bristles so that you can start drawing. This is pretty cool. The only thing I do advise against this is that it's a very messy medium, so you can get that on your clothes and your hands. However, I think messy mediums are cool mediums. I think you're the ones you have the most fun with, and to me they're kind of the ones you learn the most from too, because you practice with them, you fumble around with them, and along the way you discover what works for you and what doesn't, and you eventually start developing a style that is unique to you and unique to your art, which I think is really important. This is my old sketchbook, and it's the one I'm going to be showing. I might not show everything because this is a sketchbook and it's really personal. However, I'm going to show a few of the pieces I made and explain some of the things I did with it. This was made with watercolor and ink. As you can notice with a lot of the watercolor paintings in here, I do leave a 1-inch margin on the side of the page, and that's just for you to test out your colors and test out whatever designs you're going to be doing inside the actual piece. Because in the end, if you do use it like for commission, or if you decide to frame this, you can just crop out of this portion and leave everything out, while still giving you the space to test colors out without bleeding over on the page that's going to go over it. Okay, this is another one I made a while back. It's more of a scenery. It's got a little house there, and this one was also made with watercolors and maroon India ink. We also have this one. This one was a bit of a doodle. It started up as like a mistake, but I just built on. Here's another one too. I was kind of disappointed on this one. I didn't really get to finish it. I was trying to use the soluble graphite and the water pen I talked about previously to fill in the cobblestone and add a little bit of value to that, but I never went back to it and it never was finished. But that's This is another unfinished one, also done with black India ink, and this is a business card, and I drew one of my coworkers on there, and I taped it onto my sketchbook, and I tried out some different colors on the side. Here's another one of the watercolor pieces I made. I used darker colors to overlap with some lighter shades to make a depth effect to show the background of. This is a small demonstration of how I like to shade. You want to keep the lines kind of crisp. Do many of them, but do them kind of small and really close together. And the more you overlap them, obviously perpendicular to the last direction of the shading you did, you start adding darker hues. And for example, this is just one way, and this is 2 ways of shading, and this is like all 3 of them. It's a crisscross type of effect. You achieve a really nice effect, especially if you're doing this for people or for still life, or animals, especially if you're doing fur. This is just the exact same way, except you would add like more, I guess little flyaways, little flingy things, little flingy lines outward to give that like fluffy effect. If you're doing like pets or any other furry animal, you can use that. It's the same concept, but I guess you would have more like flyaways and a bit less neat and crisscrossy as that. Another thing you can do for shading, and this is a personal preference, is to use the soluble graphite we talked about earlier, which is this one. I've gone ahead and just shaded in a random piece of the paper, and this is just a quick demonstration of how that works. You can see how as I add water, the color progressively becomes darker. And that's how I do a lot of the shading for landscapes and or if I'm doing something super detailed in a very big piece, a big canvas, that's a good way to do that. And if you're drawing people and you want to add more value to the shading you did previously, you can also go in there with the soluble graphite and start filling that in. You're not necessarily adding lines, you're just kind of darkening the area you already added a lot of texture to. And I recommend shading above the eyes because, your brow bone does cast a shadow over your eyes. You can put a little bit of an pressed side of the head. And yeah, that's basically how I would start sketching and how I would start a new sketchbook. That was my project 3. I hope you guys like it, and I hope everyone who watched this project would be inspired and really feel compelled to start their own sketchbook and start giving way to their artistic side. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.